최근에 한국에서 논란이 된 그 계엄령 문건 사태를 좀 그런 맥락에서 만약에 해석을 한다면
Well, in all honesty, and I think that this decision showed an inability to understand, and almost every time, the leader of the side that loses often winds up in prison. Korean Peninsula is still where the Cold War is actually going on. It's the last conflict of the Cold War, and it's an ongoing conflict. And it's a dangerous conflict, and it's a conflict that fills people with great anxiety.
조은주의 Q.
그리고 곧 한국에서 대선이 예정되어 있어요. 지금 한국에서는 전사, 반역자, 그리고 성인 중에 어떤 유형의 리더가 좀 필요하다고 보시는지.
It's a very interesting question. Because I think what is happening, again, because I'm a historian, I don't just look at a moment like 2025. Try to put everything in historical perspective. And when I look at South Korea, what do I see? I see that for many years now, political power has been going back and forth between two sides. And almost every time, the leader of the side that loses is discredited and often winds up in prison. This indicates to me that the Korean people in general are unhappy with their political class and dissatisfied with what they are being offered, and that there are structural problems, deeper problems in Korean society that the political leaders are not addressing. I think right now in the world, and maybe also in Korea to a large extent, we're living through a crisis of leadership. And people are really looking for a leader who can transform society, who can take us to a better place than where we are right now. It depends on the moment, it depends on the context. There are moments in history where we need warriors who fight for a cause, who fight for justice. There are moments in history where we need rebels, who are those who refuse to accept a very bad status quo and insist that we change the world and we change the system that we live in. And then there are moments in history in which we need saints, who are people willing to sacrifice themselves in order to achieve the better good. And I think that in reality, the best leaders and the ones that we need the most are a combination of all three. That in moments that need warriors, that they are warriors. In moments that we need rebels, they are rebels. And in moments that we need saints, they are saints. The problem is when we have warriors when we need saints, we have saints when we need warriors, and when we have rebels when we need either warriors or saints. And that's, I think, where history is most important. When we study history, we can understand different situations, and we can compare our own situations to situations in the past. So we can then understand what kind of moments require different kinds of leadership, whether it's leadership in the form of a warrior, or in the form of a rebel, or in the form of a saint.
조은주의 Q.
책에서 그 소개된 전사형 리더들은 그 때로는 마키아벨리적인 전략과 폭력을 좀 정당화하기도 했습니다. 최근에 한국에서 논란이 된 그 계엄령 문건 사태를 좀 그런 맥락에서 만약에 해석을 한다면 이것을 좀 정당한 전사적 리더십의 범주로 볼 수 있을지, 아니면 좀 위험한 권력 남용의 사례로 봐야 될지 어떻게 생각하시나요?
Well, in all honesty, I don't think that Machiavelli would have approved of the decision that was made in terms of utilizing martial law to obtain goals in a democratic system. So Machiavelli wasn't just focused on the use of force. He was focused very much on strategy and what would work well for a leader in achieving power and maintaining power. And in that sense, the former president is a failure in the Machiavellian sense, because Machiavelli was looking at how to succeed and how to thrive politically. And I think that this decision showed an inability to understand the full extent of Korean history. Because if even I, who am not Korean, know enough about Korean history to have guessed and predicted that this move would fail. Democracy in Korea is not something that Koreans take for granted. Because enough people in Korea know that democracy was a very hard-fought thing in Korea. And to get democracy was very difficult. And so people do not want to lose that democracy. And when they saw this happening, what you are referring to, many people immediately thought of what was going on in the country before democracy, when there was authoritarianism and a kind of military dictatorship. And people just didn't want to go back to that.
네, 그리고 책에서 이 반역자 유형의 리더는 체제를 흔들되 또 무너뜨리기보다는 안에서 변화를 꾀하는 존재로 좀 그려지더라고요. 그런데 한국 엘리트층에는 이런 리더가 좀 유독 좀 드물다고 느껴져요. 왜 한국 사회는 체제 안에 이 반역자가 나오기 힘든 걸까요?
Well, I think it's difficult. This requires a bit of a longer, more complex answer. I think that South Korea is very haunted by its past. The Korean people are still living in the Cold War. So one example of this is the fact that the Korean Peninsula is still where the Cold War is actually going on. It's the last conflict of the Cold War, and it's an ongoing conflict. And it's a dangerous conflict, and it's a conflict that fills people with great anxiety. In addition to that, for the Korean people, there is a trauma and a tragedy. The Korean people are divided into North and South, but it's the same people. It's the Korean people. And this is a very, very difficult thing. It's like a family being divided. So these are deep psychological scars. And it has an effect on how people see political issues, economic issues, and many social issues. So it's in a way, Koreans are really trapped by their own history.
전 세계적으로 팬덤 정치나 아니면 포퓰리즘, 리더십이 좀 위기를 좀 초래하고 있는데 여기에 대해서는 좀 어떻게 생각하시나요?
Yes, I think you're right. I think that democratic systems are often threatened by populist, you can call them populist politicians or demagogues of different sort. And these are leaders or these are figures who often exploit problems that exist in society for political purposes. But they don't address the real problems that people have. And because people have problems that persist over time, they will often turn to leaders who promise them things and blame others for their problems. So the best way that democracies can protect themselves is by making sure that people have good lives in society. That way they don't need to turn to bad leaders or demagogic politicians. And we have historical precedents for this. So we know that before World War II, there was economic crisis and society was suffering. And people in Europe and other places turned to fascist or populist leaders and they destroyed their democracies. But there were other places in which democratic leaders were able to provide for the people and avoid such a fate. So one place like this was the United States, actually, which during the Great Depression, the Great Economic Crisis, had President Roosevelt, who did policies that protected the people and avoided the collapse of democracy.
조은주의 Q.
혹시 그 교육이나 경험으로 누구나 리더가 될 수 있다고 보시는지 아니면 혹시는 리더십에는 좀 타고난 자질이 필요한 건지 궁금합니다.
No, I don't think that anyone can be a leader, but I think that leadership is very broad and expansive. And I don't think that people are just born leaders. I think they have to have experience. So it's a combination of things. As very often in life, things are a combination. They're not simple. So I think that if you look at very important leaders in history, you'll find that there is a combination of certain traits that they have, some of them that they're born with, their temperament, where they come from, who their family is, that sort of thing. But then the experiences that they have, the education that they have, the values that they get, and especially the lives that they live. So in the way I formulate it in my book, I ask whether it is the leaders who make history or history that makes the leaders. Because I think that it's very important to look at even important individual leaders as products of a world, products of history, and not as just having these sort of magical powers that they're born with.
저희가 리더를 일반적으로 굉장히 좀 외향적이고 그리고 좀 카리스마가 있어야 된다 인식이 굉장히 많이 있어요. 좀 조용하고 좀 내향적인 사람도 좀 좋은 리더가 될 수 있는지 혹시 역사 속에서는 그런 좀 예시가 있는지도 굉장히 궁금하거든요.
So I think that the answer to the question is that charisma is a very broad thing, very difficult to define, but the leadership does not have to be something extroverted or someone who is very loud or someone who is very noticeable necessarily. I think what really matters is the content and the ideas and the ability to convey those ideas and that content to people. And that can take all kinds of forms. Sometimes it can be in words and can be in noise, but it can even be in a form of silence.
제가 되게 내향적인 스타일인데
Really? Introvert? Okay.
좋은 리더 될 수 있을까? 라고 생각을 해서 너무 궁금했었습니다.
Also, I'm also a very shy, introverted
Really?
person. Yes. So maybe we can start a club of shy, introverted, great leaders. Okay. So if you're an introvert, you really chose the right profession for yourself. That's the first thing I should say. Second thing is, no, well, I think it's a combination of two things. It's not just about the ideas and the content. There is the character. Character is very important. My point from earlier is that character of a leader doesn't necessarily come from being very extroverted. Introverted people can be very important leaders. Just to give an example, some of the most important leaders that I write about in the book are people that very few people in the public even have heard of. And the reason is because they did not want to be famous. They just wanted to have a better world. So, for example, some of the people who were rising up against tyranny in the 20th century, including in this country, but also in other places in the world, we don't know their names, but they were leaders. We don't know if they were extroverted or introverted. What we know is that they fought for a good cause, and that it's thanks to people like them and leaders like them that we are now able to enjoy a society that is better for all people.
조은주의 Q.
네, 그리고 한국 사회에서는 리더에게 특히 좀 더 높은 도덕성과 완벽함을 좀 요구하는 경향이 있는 것 같아요. 그래서 이러한 문화가 좀 다양한 리더십에 또 출현을 막고 있지는 않은지 혹시 교수님 어떻게 생각하시는지 궁금합니다.
I have there are two sides to this. On the one hand, in many ways, that is an envy for many people in the world because Koreans are actually able to hold their leaders accountable. So there are many places in the world where it feels like leaders can get away with anything. They can commit crimes, they can be corrupt, they can do basically whatever they want, and they have impunity. So I think Koreans actually don't have that. They really expect their leaders to perform well, and they are punished politically if they don't. On the other hand, I think there is a punitive element. So because power is going back and forth, what happens is that leaders always wind up discarded and even criminalized by the opposition coming into power. And this kind of cycle goes back and forth, and it's a cycle that the Koreans can't really escape from. So it can be quite limiting, and it makes people fearful of entering into a leadership position.
그리고 그 AI가 더 합리적인 판단을 내리는 이런 시대에 좀 인간 리더들에게는 어떤 가치나 어떤 결단력이 좀 남아야 한다고 보시는지.
So AI is everywhere, and we are all talking about AI almost all the time. And the more we talk about AI, the more the people that own AI make money. So AI is important, and it's an important tool, but it can never replace human beings. Our brains are capable of doing something which AI is still not capable of doing, and that is original thought. We as humans are the ones who come up with the ideas first. AI aggregates, collects data, and does things very efficiently and fast. But human beings and leaders have a spark in them that is not able to be replaced by AI, in my opinion.
네, 그리고 교수님께서는 중국이나 스페인, 그리고 멕시코, 프랑스, 한국, 인도 등 다양한 나라에서 지금 강의를 하셨는데요. 혹시 이 나라별 리더십에 대한 인식이나 기대가 좀 다른지.
One of the great benefits for me of traveling around the world, teaching and lecturing and speaking to people, especially young people, is seeing the great variety and differences between places and cultures. So at the same time, another thing that I realized, while cultures are different, people all over the world are actually very similar. And they often
Yeah.
want very similar things,
아,
especially younger people. And these are very basic things. We all, as human beings, want to have things like a good life for ourselves, for our families, for our communities. And no matter where we are, in Korea, in America, Mexico, China, we are looking for leaders who can help us get these things. So we are different and we are similar at the same time.
마지막으로 교수님, 한국 독자들한테 꼭 전하고 싶은 메시지가 있다면 한 말씀 부탁드립니다.
Korean leaders. Readers. Okay, readers, not leaders. Or maybe readers. Yes, I hope that the readers become leaders. That is my
둘 다 더
final
좋은데요.
message. I hope that whoever reads this book, and I hope people read this book, whether or not what they read about in the book is from Korea or not, I hope that they find inspiration from history about what leadership can do in this world. Sometimes leaders do very harmful things. Sometimes they do very great things. And I think that Koreans deserve good things to happen to them, just like other people in the world. And so if someone reads the book and has an idea for who could be a good leader, or even they have the idea that they could be good leaders, then I think that the book has accomplished something important.
오늘 이제 교수님과 이렇게 얘기 나누면서 리더와 리더십에 대한 본질에 대해서 더 많이 좀 고민하고 생각하게 되는 정말 소중한 시간이었습니다. Thank you for your time and your insight.
감사합니다. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.